Weapon designation: human. Effectiveness rating: apocalyptic. Status: contained. Senior archivist Cel Thoros trembled as she read the ancient text, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly in succession, a sign of extreme stress among the Vextol species. The holographic display cast eerie blue light across her scaled face as the translation algorithms continued decoding the damaged data crystal recovered from the abandoned outpost in the Cygnus Arm. The crystal contained the last transmission of a scouting vessel from the old Imperium, an empire that had fallen over 3,000 cycles ago. 3,000 cycles of peace, of rebuilding, of forgetting the horrors that had nearly driven all sapient life to extinction. Archivist, your findings. High Commander Vendrell's voice startled her. The imposing Keldari commander filled the doorway of the cramped archive room, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial lights. Cel Thoros straightened her posture. Commander, I found references to a weapon system used during the Crystalline Wars, something called human. Vendrell's sensory antennae stiffened. The Crystalline Wars? That's ancient history, archivist. What relevance does this have to our current situation? She gestured to another display showing real-time footage of the galaxy's Orion Arm. Entire star systems blinked out one by one as the crystalline void swarm consumed everything in its path. The void swarm we face today shares the same quantum signature as the creatures described in these records. And according to this data, conventional weapons were useless against them. Her inner membranes flickered with excitement. But this weapon, this human, it worked when nothing else could. Vendrell moved closer, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. What kind of weapon are we talking about? Energy-based? Biological? Dimensional? That's just it, Commander. The records are fragmented. All I know is that it was stored in a system called Sol, and that it was powerful enough to force the first swarm into retreat. She hesitated. But there's something else. The way it's described, it's almost as if. An alarm blared throughout the station, cutting her off. The overhead lights shifted to emergency red. Commander! A communication officer's voice crackled through the intercom. The void swarm has breached the Ixion cluster. 3 more systems lost. Evacuation protocols have failed. 15 billion souls. Gone. Vendrell's mandibles clicked in agitation. How long until they reach our core worlds? At current velocity, less than 6 standard months, sir. The commander turned back to Cel Thoros. Archivist, you now have the highest priority clearance. Assemble whatever team you need. If this human weapon exists, find it. Within 12 hours, Cel Thoros found herself aboard the Luminary, the Concordet's most advanced research vessel. Beside her stood an unlikely team. Dr. Lath, a brilliant xenoarchaeologist whose 6 limbs moved with graceful precision as he examined the data crystal. Captain Krastor, a veteran warrior whose scarred exoskeleton told stories of battles won and lost. And Professor Zinn, a reclusive historian whose singular eye contained multispectral capabilities that could perceive layers of information invisible to others. As the Luminary prepared to enter fold space, Cel Thoros gazed at the star map showing their destination, a restricted zone that had been quarantined for millennia. The coordinates point to a system called Sol, she explained to her team. A place where something so dangerous occurred that the entire sector was deemed forbidden. What exactly are we looking for? Asked Captain Krastor, checking her pulse rifle for the 3rd time. Cel Thoros' inner membranes flickered uncertainly. A weapon. A something. Perhaps a device or a technology. All I know is that it's called Human, and it saved the galaxy once before." The engines hummed as the luminary accelerated toward fold space, carrying them toward either salvation or folly, with 15 billion freshly extinguished lives demanding they not fail. The luminary emerged from fold space with a shudder that rattled its bulkheads. Through the observation deck's viewport, the team beheld a graveyard of stars, a region where cosmic debris and radiation told the tale of a cataclysm beyond imagining. "Sensors are detecting unusual radiation patterns," reported Dr. Lath, his 6 appendages working multiple control interfaces simultaneously. "Far more complex than natural decay. Whatever happened here was engineered." Captain Krastor adjusted her breathing apparatus as warning lights flashed across her console. "Life support is struggling with the ambient radiation. We have 16 hours before shielding degrades to dangerous levels." 16 hours to find a weapon that might not exist, muttered Professor Zinn, his singular eye constantly shifting through spectrum analyses, focused on a cluster of debris ahead. "There, that debris field shows signs of artificial composition, not random cosmic matter." Zelthoros felt her scales tighten against her body, our species' response to mounting tension. "Take us closer, Captain." As the luminary approached, the seemingly random debris resolved into the remnants of a planetary system. 9 orbital paths were still discernible in the dust and fragments, though the central star had long since collapsed. According to the ancient star charts, this matches the Sol system configuration, confirmed Zinn. The 3rd orbit would have contained the planet designated Earth. "There's nothing there now," observed Krastor grimly, "just dust and radiation." Lath's appendages suddenly froze over his instruments. "I'm detecting an energy signature, faint but unmistakable, originating from the 6th orbital path." The luminary changed course, navigating through treacherous fields of debris. What they found stunned them all. A small moon, partially intact, orbiting what once might have been a gas giant. Unlike the chaos surrounding it, this moon appeared deliberately preserved. "The energy signature is coming from beneath the surface," said Lath. "Some kind of installation." Landing on the moon's icy surface proved challenging, with howling methane storms battering the ship. Dressed in environmental suits, the team ventured outside, following Lath's readings to a ridge overlooking a vast crater. There, Zelthoros pointed toward a structure barely visible beneath centuries of ice accumulation. "That's not natural formation." Using the ship's thermal equipment, they melted their way through layers of ice until reaching a sealed doorway marked with unfamiliar symbols. "This language doesn't match any known species in the Concordat archives," said Zinn, his eyes cycling through different spectrums. "But wait, there's something beneath the frost." Carefully clearing away more ice, they revealed an image that sent shivers through their environmental suits. A bipedal figure alongside unrecognizable symbols. Could that be a human?" whispered Zelthoros. After hours of careful work, Lath managed to activate an ancient power cell, causing the doorway to slide open with a groan of protesting metal. Inside, they discovered a small outpost, clearly an observation station of some kind. "This was a monitoring facility," said Zinn, examining dusty consoles. "Designed to observe the 3rd planet." His eye widened. "I'm detecting data storage systems still intact." With careful manipulation, they activated the station's main computer. A holographic display sputtered to life, showing images of blue-green world teeming with life, and bipedal beings constructing cities, machines, and starships. "By the void," gasped Krastor. They weren't just a weapon, they were a species. The holograms shifted to show something else. The same world, now under attack by crystalline entities identical to the Void Swarm currently threatening the Concordat. The recording ended with a message repeating across all frequencies. In case of cosmic emergency, seek the Guardian. Earth coordinates follow. The weapon is not a device. The weapon is human. As the coordinates downloaded to their systems, a proximity alarm blared through their communicators. Captain Krastor checked her scanner and hissed in alarm. "We have incoming. Void Swarm Scout vessel, approaching rapidly." Exel Thoros clutched the precious data module. "We need to reach Earth. This moon was just an outpost. Whatever we're looking for is on the third planet." They raced back toward the luminary as the first crystalline fragments began raining from the darkening sky. The luminary broke atmosphere at dangerous velocity, Captain Krastor's skilled manipulations barely keeping them ahead of the pursuing Void Scout. Behind them, the moon outpost erupted in crystalline destruction as the Scout harvested its materials. "Damage report," barked Krastor as they stabilized in high orbit around what remained of Earth. "Propulsion at 60%, shields at 43%, reported Dr. Lath. "We can outrun them, but not for long." Below them stretched a barren landscape that bore little resemblance to the vibrant blue world from the outpost recordings. Continental shapes remained vaguely recognizable, but where oceans once existed, only vast salt flats remained beneath swirling dust storms. The atmosphere had thinned to a toxic haze that glowed eerily in the dim light of the distant, failing sun. "Can anything still exist down there?" whispered Sel Thoros, her four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of profound sadness among her kind. Professor Zinn's singular eye rotated toward the planet's surface. "The coordinates point to these mountain ranges," he indicated. "And I'm detecting faint energy signatures consistent with the outpost technology. Something survived." "The Scout is circling back," warned Krastor. "We need to move now." They plotted a descent trajectory calculated to use the planet's magnetic anomalies as cover. As they broke through the atmospheric boundary, violent turbulence rattled the ship's frame. Crimson dust storms reduced visibility to near zero, forcing Lath to navigate by instruments alone. "We're approaching the coordinates," he announced as they skimmed over an endless salt flat. Ahead loomed a mountain range, its peaks worn down by millennia of erosion. The luminary settled on a plateau, its landing struts sinking slightly into the loose soil. The team donned environmental suits designed to protect against both radiation and the caustic atmosphere. Outside, howling winds carried dust particles that scraped against their visors like tiny claws. "The energy signature is strongest through that ravine," said Lath, pointing toward a narrow passage between towering rock faces. They trudged forward, each step a battle against the swirling winds. The ravine eventually opened into a sheltered valley where the storms subsided enough to reveal their objective. A massive blast door set into the mountainside, partially buried under centuries of debris. "Those markings," Zelthoros approached cautiously. "Similar to the outpost, but more elaborate." As they cleared away debris, more symbols became visible, and alongside them, stylized images of the bipedal beings they now knew as humans. "This installation appears military in nature," observed Krastor, examining what appeared to be defensive positions surrounding the entrance. Whatever they kept here, they protected it fiercely. Dr. Lath approached the control mechanism, his appendages working delicately across the ancient interface. The system requires authentication, but it's responding to power. If I can just. Without warning, The ground beneath them hummed to life. Panels slid open along the valley floor, revealing automated defense turrets that swiveled toward them with deadly precision. "Nobody move," hissed Krastor, her hand hovering near her weapon. A mechanical voice echoed through the valley, speaking in an unknown language. When they didn't respond, it cycled through several more before switching to a crude approximation of modern Concordat standard. Unauthorized presence detected. Identify or face termination. Excel Thoros stepped forward cautiously. "We are representatives of the Galactic Concordat. We seek assistance against the crystalline threat." A moment of silence followed, then the defense systems lowered slightly. "Crystalline threat protocol recognized. Present genetic sample for verification." Genetic sample. Professor Zin's eye rotated in confusion. "It wants human DNA. We don't have." "Wait," interrupted Thoros, reaching for the data module from the Moon outpost. "This contains biological trace elements from the observation station. Perhaps." She carefully placed the module against the scanner. 10 seconds passed before the massive doors began to rumble open, revealing a dark passage leading deep into the mountain. "Minimal access granted," announced the mechanical voice. "Proceed to verification chamber." As they stepped across the threshold, the doors sealed behind them with finality, automated lights flickering to life along a corridor that stretched downward into Earth's ancient depths. The verification chamber was a stark, hexagonal room with walls of brushed metal that still gleamed despite the passage of eons. In the center stood a cylindrical console pulsing with soft blue light. "This technology," murmured Dr. Lath, his appendages hovering reverently over the console's surface, "it's beyond anything in our archives. Even after thousands of years, it functions perfectly." A holographic interface materialized above the console, displaying incomprehensible symbols that shifted and reorganized themselves as if searching for something. "Partial genetic match detected. Limited access granted," announced the mechanical voice. "Warning: full functionality requires administrator authorization." The far wall slid open, revealing a corridor that descended deeper into the facility. As they proceeded, environmental systems activated around them. Air purifiers hummed to life, temperature regulators adjusted to accommodate their diverse physiologies, and dormant lighting awakened to guide their path. "This installation wasn't just built to last centuries," observed Professor Zin, his eye capturing every detail. "It was designed to remain operational for millennia. Whatever they were protecting, they intended it to survive the death of their civilization." The corridor opened into a vast chamber that drew gasps from the entire team. Hundreds of crystalline pods lined the walls, arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Each pod was connected to a network of cables and conduits that pulsed with subdued energy. "Life support systems," whispered Thoros, approaching the nearest pod. The crystalline surface was frosted, obscuring its contents. "They're preservation chambers." Captain Krastor circled the central platform warily. "So the weapon isn't a device. It's stored biological material." Dr. Lath moved from pod to pod, checking their status displays. "Most have failed," he reported grimly. "Power fluctuations, containment breaches, the entropy of time." "But not all," interjected Professor Zin, his eye fixed on a cluster of 5 pods separated from the others. "These still show active status." The team gathered around the functioning pods. As they approached, warming protocols initiated, and the frost dissipated from the crystalline surfaces. Thoros felt her heart stutter as she beheld what lay within. 5 bipedal beings, humans suspended in a state between life and death. Their skin colors varied, their physical characteristics diverse, but each unmistakably belonged to the same species shown in the outpost recordings. They preserved themselves, Xelthoros breathed. Not their technology, not their weapons themselves. The central platform suddenly illuminated, projecting a holographic figure, a human female dressed in what appeared to be a uniform. Though merely light and data, her presence commanded attention. Welcome to Installation Zero, last bastion of Project Endurance. The projection spoke, its language automatically translating to Concordat standard. I am the facility supervisor. My purpose is to preserve and protect humanity's final contingency against the crystalline threat. You're an artificial intelligence, realized Professor Zinn. A digital custodian, the projection corrected, programmed to maintain this facility until rescue or recovery became possible. You have triggered the emergency protocols by referencing the crystalline entities. Has the threat returned? Captain Krastor stepped forward. The Void Swarm has consumed 17 star systems in the last cycle. Our conventional weapons are useless. We found references to a weapon called Human that supposedly defeated them before. The projection's expression shifted subtly. There was a misunderstanding in your translation. Human was never the weapon. Operation Last Hope was the contingency plan to preserve our species' unique abilities. When all technological solutions failed against the crystalline hive mind, it was the unpredictable nature of human cognition that ultimately disrupted their patterns. The projection gestured to the 5 pods. These individuals were selected for their exceptional problem-solving capabilities. Dr. Elena Chen, quantum physicist. Commander Jackson Wei, tactical specialist. Dr. Imani Okoro, genobiologist. Professor Sergei Volkov, materials engineer. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, systems theorist. Xelthoros approached the pod containing Dr. Chen, studying the peaceful face of the sleeping human. You're saying the weapon we seek is their minds. Precisely, confirmed the projection. What your ancient records called the weapon named Human was humanity's cognitive flexibility, our capacity to innovate beyond logical parameters when facing extinction. A distant rumble shook the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. The Void Scout, hissed Captain Krastor. It's found us. Another tremor shook the facility, more violent than the first. Dust and small fragments of ceiling rained down upon the preservation pods. The facility's outer defenses are engaging the intruder, the digital custodian reported, its holographic form flickering briefly. They will not hold indefinitely. We must initiate revival protocols immediately. Revival. Captain Krastor's mandibles clicked anxiously. We came for a weapon, not to resurrect an extinct species. Xelthoros moved toward the central console. According to the records, these humans are the weapon. We need them. The revival process for all 5 subjects would require 37 hours. The custodian informed them. Given current circumstances, I recommend selective revival. Dr. Elena Chen's expertise in quantum physics would be most relevant to the crystalline threat. Another impact rocked the installation, causing several inactive pods to crack and shatter. Structural integrity at 73%, the custodian announced. Outer defenses breached. Estimated time before facility compromise, 90 minutes. Do it, ordered Xelthoros. Revive Dr. Chen. The custodian interfaced with the control systems, and Elena Chen's pod hummed with increased activity. Nutrient solutions flowed through translucent tubes, and neural stimulation sequences pulsed in complex patterns. "What about our ship?" asked Dr. Lath. "The luminary could escape, while the facility's defences distract the scout." Captain Krastor shook her head. "Not without significant repairs. The atmospheric entry damaged our propulsion systems more than I initially reported. I didn't want to diminish morale." "Then we stand and fight," declared Sel Thoros, her scales flattening against her body in determination. The revival process continued for 40 tense minutes as the team fortified their position. Professor Zinn interfaced with the facility's systems to redirect remaining defences, while Dr. Lath and Captain Krastor assembled makeshift barricades from damaged equipment. Finally, the preservation pod containing Dr. Elena Chen hissed open, releasing a cloud of cryogenic vapour. The human woman inside, small by Concordat standards, with dark hair and olive skin, opened her eyes slowly, consciousness returning in increments. Her first words were whispered in her native tongue, incomprehensible to the team until the custodian translated. "Did it work? Are they gone?" The custodian explained the situation rapidly as Elena struggled to coordinating her atrophied muscles. Despite the revival drugs coursing through her system, her movements were weak and unsteady as Sel Thoros helped her from the pod. "How long?" Elena asked, her voice now using Concordat standard via the facility's translation field. "Approximately 3,722 of your years," Professor Zinn answered. Elena closed her eyes, grief washing across her features. When she opened them again, determination had replaced sorrow. Everyone I knew, my entire civilization, gone. "Not entirely gone," Sel Thoros said gently. "Your legacy lives on in the records that led us here. Your people defeated the crystalline entities once. We need to know how." Before Elena could respond, the facility's alarms blared with renewed urgency. "Multiple breaches detected," announced the custodian. "Crystalline entities have penetrated to sublevel 3. Estimated arrival, 8 minutes. Captain Krastor readied her pulse rifle. "I've fought these things before. Conventional weapons barely slow them down." Elena's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the chamber. Despite her physical weakness, her mind was clearly functioning at remarkable speed. "The preservation pods, what's their power source?" "Quantum isolation cells," the custodian replied. "Self-sustaining through dimensional energy capture." "And the crystalline entities," Elena continued, her voice growing stronger. "They maintain cohesion through quantum entanglement across their structure, yes." Dr. Lath bobbed in agreement. "Their entire hive consciousness operates on quantum principles. That's why they're so difficult to defeat. Damage to one section is instantly compensated for by the whole." A slow smile spread across Elena's face as she steadied herself against a console. "Then we don't need to destroy them. We need to confuse them." Her fingers began dancing across the interface with surprising dexterity. "Help me access the pod maintenance systems. I have an idea." As the sounds of crystalline movement echoed down the corridors, the human worked with astonishing focus, reconfiguring systems that had faithfully preserved her life for millennia into something entirely new. "What exactly are you doing?" asked Sel Thoros, watching in fascination. "Creating quantum noise," Elena replied without looking up. "If I'm right, it should disrupt their communication network just long enough for us to escape." "They're here," Captain Krastor announced, her pulse rifle humming as she aimed at the chamber's entrance. The metallic doors bulged inward, crystalline growths forcing their way through microscopic seams in the ancient barrier. Elena worked feverishly, rerouting power from the failed preservation pods to the central console. Our movements grew more confident with each passing minute as the revival drugs took full effect. "Almost there," she muttered. The quantum isolation cells were designed to prevent entanglement, to preserve our neural patterns. If we reverse the polarity and broadcast the field. Dr. Lath assisted, his 6 appendages moving in perfect coordination with Elena's instructions. "Fascinating approach," he commented, "creating quantum static rather than attempting destruction." A crystalline tendril pierced through the door, its translucent surface reflecting the chamber's blue lighting in hypnotic patterns. More tendrils followed, weaving together to force the opening wider. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," urged Tel Thoros, backing away from the encroaching threat. Professor Zin's eye rotated rapidly, analyzing the crystalline structure. Their formation is adapting to the facility's architecture. They're learning from it, incorporating its patterns. "That's what they do," Elena explained without looking up from her work. "They consume technology, adapt to it, improve themselves through absorption. That's why conventional weapons fail. They just incorporate the attack patterns into their defense systems." The doors finally gave way with a screech of protesting metal. A wave of crystalline entities flowed into the chamber, not individual creatures, but a single organism composed of countless interconnected fragments. Each shard reflected the light differently, creating an eerie, beautiful display that belied its deadly nature. Captain Krastor fired her pulse rifle, the energy blast striking the leading edge of the crystalline mass. The affected area briefly dimmed, but quickly restructured itself, the damage absorbed and compensated for. "Fall back," Krastor ordered, continuing to fire covering shots as the team retreated toward Elena's position. "Ready," Elena announced, her finger hovering over the activation control. "Everyone, close your eyes and cover your audio receptors." The team complied just as Elena triggered her improvised device. The quantum isolation cells activated simultaneously, but instead of containing energy, they broadcast it, creating a cascading field of quantum disruption that filled the chamber. No sound accompanied the effect, but a wave of distortion rippled through visual space. When the team opened their eyes, they found the crystalline mass frozen in place, its perfect structure now chaotic and disorganized. Individual shards vibrated independently, no longer part of a cohesive whole. "It worked," gasped Tel Thoros. "What did you do to them?" Elena shakily rose to her feet, leaning against the console. "Quantum entanglement disruption. These entities operate as a hive mind through quantum links. I created enough quantum noise to temporarily sever those connections." She gestured toward the disorganized mass. Each piece is now operating independently, without the collective intelligence that makes them so dangerous. "How long will it last?" asked Captain Krastor, cautiously approaching the now harmless crystal fragments. "Not long," Elena admitted. "Minutes, maybe less. They'll eventually re-establish their connections and reorganize. This was just a temporary solution using available resources." Professor Zin carefully collected several crystalline shards that had broken off during the disruption. These samples could be invaluable for developing a more permanent countermeasure. Elena's gaze drifted to the remaining active preservation pods. "We should revive the others. Each of us specialized in different fields. Together, we might develop something more effective." Another tremor shook the facility, more violent than previous ones. "Facility integrity compromised," announced the digital custodian. "The scout vessel is attempting to harvest the entire installation. Complete structural failure estimated in 45 minutes. "The luminary," Captain Krastor reminded them. "We need repairs to escape." Elena studied the disorganized crystal fragments, her mind visibly working through possibilities. These contain enormous energy, she mused. If we can safely extract it and reconfigure your ship's damaged systems. She turned to Dr. Lath. Show me your propulsion schematics. I think these crystals might be compatible with your technology. As Lath projected the luminary's engineering diagrams, Elena immersed herself in understanding the alien vessel's systems. Her eyes darted between the schematics and the crystalline fragments, seeing connections and possibilities that had eluded the Concordat's finest engineers. This might work, she whispered, a spark of hope illuminating her features for the first time since awakening. Structural collapse in 32 minutes. The digital custodian announced as another violent tremor shook the facility, sending ceiling fragments crashing down around them. Elena worked with remarkable focus, directing Dr. Lath and Captain Krastor as they carefully extracted energy from the crystalline fragments. The quantum matrices in these crystals are compatible with your fold space drive, she explained. They're essentially condensed energy in a structured lattice. What about the other humans? Selphoros asked, glancing at the 4 remaining preservation pods. We can't just leave them. Elena paused, conflict visible on her face. There's no time to complete the revival process. But she turned to the digital custodian. Can we transfer the pods to the luminary? Maintain stasis during transport. Possible. The custodian confirmed after a moment of calculation. The pods contain self-sustaining power cells designed for emergency relocation. However, moving all 4 would exceed the luminary's cargo capacity. Then we take 2, Elena decided, her voice firm despite the pain in her eyes. Dr. Okoro and Professor Volkov. Their expertise in xenobiology and materials engineering will be most valuable against the swarm. As they worked to prepare the pods for transport, Professor Zinn interfaced with the facility's database. I'm downloading all accessible records, he reported. Human history, scientific advancements, cultural archives, everything that survived. Facility breach on multiple levels, the custodian warned. Crystalline reintegration at 60% and accelerating. Elena connected the final power coupling to the crystalline energy extractor she had improvised. That's it. We should have enough power to reach fold space and maintain minimal life support. And the remaining humans? Selphoros asked quietly. Elena's gaze dropped. Dr. Rodriguez and Commander Wei will remain in stasis here. The custodian will initiate emergency protocols to preserve them as long as possible. Her voice wavered slightly. Perhaps someday someone will return for them. Krastor's security scanner beeped urgently. The disorganized crystals are re-establishing their network. We have minutes at most. With grim efficiency, they disconnected the selected preservation pods and prepared them for transport. Elena downloaded critical research data to a portable device and took a final look at her 2 companions who would remain behind. I promise your sacrifice won't be forgotten, she whispered. As they made their way through the collapsing facility, the reorganizing crystal entities began flowing through the corridors behind them, moving with increasing coordination. The ground shook continuously now, structural supports groaning under the strain of the scout vessel's harvesting beams. This way, called Krastor, leading them through a maintenance shaft that opened onto the plateau where the luminary waited. Above them, the angry red sky was dominated by the Void Scout vessel, a twisted mass of crystalline structures that pulsed with cold light. They loaded the preservation pods into the luminary's cargo hold and rushed to the bridge. Dr. Lath immediately began integrating Elena's crystalline energy extractor into the ship's propulsion systems. The weapon crystals are almost fully reintegrated, reported Professor Zinn from the sensor station. They're approaching the luminary. Elena studied the ship's control systems, quickly grasping their function despite their alien design. The scout vessel is focusing its harvesting beam on the facility, she observed. That's our window. Once the systems are online, we make a straight burn for the upper atmosphere, then initiate fold space the moment we clear the gravity well. Propulsion systems accepting the crystalline energy, confirmed Dr. Lath, his appendages dancing across the engineering console. Power levels at 120% of normal. The facility behind them began to collapse inward, drawn by the scout's harvesting beam. The crystalline entities flowed out of the disintegrating structure, converging on the luminary with deadly purpose. Now or never, urged Krastor, her hands poised over the flight controls. Now, Elena confirmed, her eyes fixed on the stars above. Take us home. The luminary's engines flared with unusual brilliance, the crystalline energy burning with preternatural intensity. The ship leaped forward, outpacing the pursuing entities as it climbed steeply through the toxic atmosphere. Behind them, the ancient human facility, humanity's last outpost on their homeworld, vanished into the harvesting beam of the Void Scout. Fold space entry in 5 seconds, announced Lath. As the stars began to elongate around them, Elena whispered a farewell to Earth, from dust to dust, but not forgotten. The luminary emerged from fold space at the edge of Concordat territory, its hull glowing with residual energy from the modified drive system. On the bridge, Zelthoros stared in horror at the tactical display. 3 central Concordat worlds glowed red, already lost to the advancing void swarm while they were away. "We're too late," Captain Krastor whispered, mandibles clicking in distress. "No," Elena countered firmly. "We have what we came for. The information, the samples, and—" She gestured toward the cargo bay, where Dr. Okoro's preservation pod was undergoing the revival process. Another mind to help solve this puzzle. The ship's communication array suddenly activated, detecting a transmission from the capital world. "This is High Commander Vendril to all Concordat vessels. The Sentinel line has fallen. All remaining ships converge on Capital World for final defense. May the Void have mercy where we could not." Elena studied the tactical display, her eyes narrowing as she observed the swarm's movement patterns. They're not consuming systems randomly, she realized. There's a pattern, a mathematical progression based on resource density and defensive capabilities. Professor Zinn's eye rotated toward her. "You can predict their movements." "To an extent." Elena manipulated the display, extrapolating the swarm's advance. They'll strike the capital world last, not out of mercy, but efficiency. They're isolating it, cutting off support before consuming the richest prize. A signal from the cargo bay indicated that Dr. Imani Okoro's revival was complete. Within minutes, the xenobiologist joined them on the bridge, her disorientation giving way to focused professionalism as Elena explained their situation. The crystalline structures, Imani mused, examining the samples under a molecular scanner. They're not just weapons or tools, they're an extension of a central consciousness, almost like nerve cells in a vast organism. "Can we kill it?" asked Krastor bluntly. Imani shook her head. "Not with conventional means, but disruption, as Elena demonstrated. That has potential. The quantum connections are their strength and their vulnerability." Over the next 12 hours, as the luminary raced toward the capital world, the 2 humans worked relentlessly alongside their Concordat allies. Elena adapted her quantum disruption technology to work on a larger scale, while the money developed a biological component that would prevent the swarm from quickly adapting. "We're approaching Capital World," announced Krastor as they emerged from their final fold space jump. The scene before them was grim. Hundreds of crystal ships surrounded the planet, methodically dismantling the orbital defenses. The remaining Concordat fleet fought valiantly, but ineffectively, their weapons barely slowing the implacable advance. "We need to broadcast our disruption signal from the planetary defense network," Elena explained. "It's the only transmitter powerful enough to affect the entire swarm simultaneously." "That means landing," noted Xelthoros. "Through that." She gestured toward the crystal blockade. Elena smiled grimly. "We have one advantage they don't expect. They've never encountered humans before. Using the crystalline energy to boost their engines beyond normal parameters, Krastor piloted the Luminary in a desperate, unpredictable approach that confused the swarm's mathematically perfect defensive grid. Their randomized trajectory, guided by Elena's intuitive suggestions rather than computer-optimized patterns, allowed them to slip through gaps in the blockade that no logical analysis would have identified. They landed at the planetary defense headquarters amid chaos. The Concordat's leaders were preparing for evacuation as crystal tendrils breached the lower levels of the facility. High Commander Vendrell himself met them, his normally imposing presence diminished by defeat. Archivist Xelthoros, he acknowledged warily, "I see you found your weapon." "We found something better," Xelthoros replied, introducing Elena and Amani. As the humans explained their plan, hope gradually returned to Vendrell's compound eyes. "You believe this will work?" "There are no guarantees," Elena admitted. "But it's based on technology that worked against them before." With time running out, the Defense Network engineers incorporated Elena's disruptor into their transmission array, while the money prepared her biological countermeasure. When the crystal entities breached the command level, the system was ready. "All or nothing," Elena said, activating the signal. The effect rippled outward from the planet like an invisible tide. Throughout the system, the void swarm froze, their perfect coordination shattered by quantum chaos. The biological component attached itself to the disruption wave, rewriting the very structure of the crystals, preventing redaptation. As the disorganized crystal ships drifted powerless, the remaining Concordat fleet launched a coordinated attack, shattering them into harmless fragments. In the aftermath, as celebration erupted around them, Elena stood quietly at a viewport, gazing at the stars. "Your people would be proud," Xelthoros said, joining her. Elena nodded. "We were never the strongest or the most advanced, but we never stopped trying, never stopped believing solutions existed. That's what made us human." Across the Concordat, the story spread, how an ancient species had returned from extinction to save them all. How the weapon named Human had proven to be not a device of destruction, but a mind that refused to accept defeat. And among the stars, humanity lived again.